In place of our normal weekly weather forecast, this week we'll hear from DTN senior ag meteorologist Bryce Anderson. The world's second and third largest soybean producers, Brazil and Argentina, are now in their growing seasons for beans, while the U.S., the world's leading producer, is now in its off-season. We talked with Bryce at the Soybean Day in Wahoo last week about scenarios for both regions, starting with the precipitation outlook for this state during winter.
Well, moisture during the winter here in Nebraska is going to be generally near normal the way things are playing out. We've had some rain, we've had some snow, and nothing really out of line at all. I think that the best chance for above normal precipitation will be in the southwestern part of the state because of an influence from at least a weak El Nino with a little bit more moisture trailing in. And we started to see some of that here during the month of December with a few of these weather systems coming in out of California and the Four Corners area.
You mentioned El Nino before. Reinforce to me what that means just in the general weather scene here in Nebraska.
Well, with El Nino, in effect, the Pacific being warmer than average and the trade wind patterns having a little bit more of an active subtropical jet stream, we tend to see a higher amount of moisture in the southwestern plains making its way into southwestern Nebraska. Now, over the remainder of the state, we're going to be on the edge because farther to the east, over the Great Lakes and the eastern Corn Belt, they generally stay a little bit drier, so we're kind of in between those two moisture patterns. Temperatures are fairly mild, and I think that's a big takeaway considering the fact that, you know, last winter it was so cold for so long.
Does that hold out then through winter, the mild temperatures?
I think we're going to see that. There will be some shots of some kind of colder air, but it doesn't look at this point like the polar vortex is going to, you know, forge its way south and just, you know, make a return. And that's not even a good weather term, but, you know, the influence of the polar vortex was so big last winter, doesn't look like it's going to be that way this winter.
Let's move south to Brazil and Argentina. What is it like, or what has it been like during their planting year for soybeans?
Brazil started out on the dry side, especially over the major soybean grower, Mato Grosso province. But the rains began around early November, and the rainy season has definitely set in. We've seen moisture over the past couple weeks of anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of rainfall, and that's over the entire Brazil soybean belt. The official projection from the Brazil Ag Department is that their soybean crop is going to be 95 million tons, which would be a new record, but it could be as high as 98, considering the kind of improvement that they've had.
But when is the critical period for that growing region?
Well, the critical period is coming up now in January and February for the majority of their soybean crop. Same story in Argentina. But the way things are developing, and with at least a weak El Nino going on, there's a very low likelihood that they're going to all of a sudden turn around and get into a hot and dry period. It's not out of the question, but the likelihood is quite low.
That precipitation that you mentioned, is that about average?
That's a little bit above average, actually, for the season. But considering how dry things were, they'll take it, and you know, their crops are obviously making use of it.
What about temperatures there during the growing season?
Temperatures are going to be pretty mild. You know, warm. You know, a lot of 90+ degree days. But with clouds and rain, we know what that does. You know, that takes that temperature and kind of levels it out, kind of flattens it out somewhat.